Hello and welcome to the Artellectuals podcast. For today's episode, we have an amazing guest, Julia Choi, whom I became friends with over a decade ago when studying at the Juilliard School's pre-college division. In this episode, I spoke with Julia about her career and the grueling audition process musicians and artists have to face to even have a chance at winning the audition. She took at least 30 auditions before landing her dream job with the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. Julia dives quite deeply into her process, and while most people would have given up in her shoes, she persevered and made it to the end of the tunnel. There was also a book that helped aid her during this process called You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. You can find more information about Julia on her website, juliachoiviolinist.com. Before we continue with the show, it would be a huge help if you could take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you're on YouTube, or leave a rating and review if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts. Thank you. Now, I'm honored to present today's podcast with Julia Choi. All right. Well, thank you, Julia, for being a part of this. I really appreciate your time and everything.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And, we actually know each other from Juilliard pre-college way back when. So it's nice to see your face again after so many years. I knew your sister a little bit, so we were actually in the same studio. So
yeah, it's been probably over a decade, if not 20 years. So
yeah,
so
and I appreciate that you want to come on, and this is good for our audience to learn about musicians who have made it through the ropes of the craziness of the music industry, and you landed this amazing career. So we'll touch on that, and we'll touch on also how you've been affected by the pandemic and all of these things as well. But it'll be great to first get a little foundational background on who you are and where you came from, how you were influenced during your upbringing, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I was born in Korea, and we immigrated to the U.S. when I was 4 years old, and we moved to New Jersey, and we're still here. So I went to school in New York City at Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music, and so I've lived there for a couple of years as well. I haven't moved around very much, so I've basically been on the East Coast my whole life. In terms of influences, I have a couple of groups of people that I would like to talk about. So my family, my teachers, and my peers influenced me the most. My mom is a pianist, and she was a music educator and a teacher at a school in Korea. And so when we left, she basically had to give up her work behind, and she made that sacrifice for us, at which point she switched gears and decided to give all her energy into me and my sister, who plays the cello. And so we came to the States because my dad was working for Samsung at the time, and his company offered him the opportunity to work in the US. And at the time, it was just temporary, and so we didn't know that this would eventually be extended. But thanks to my dad being good at whatever he does at work, we eventually became citizens, and we're happy to call New Jersey our home. So we are living the immigrant American dream.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how soon were you able to, what did you do once you arrived in New York? How were you brought up here?
We just basically did all the, I don't know, I guess it would be kind of a step-by-step thing. We came to New Jersey and we went to pre-college, actually, which is where I met you when we were really young. And just North Jersey being very close in proximity with New York City, which is one of the pinnacle cities in the world for music and for the arts in general. So we were able to study with all the the best teachers and have the best education. And we, of course, there were so many hurdles and lots of tears shed and lots of bat mitzvahs and parties and sleepovers that I couldn't attend during my childhood. Mm-hmm. And so I had to make a lot of sacrifices for social events. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that I never take for granted and really cherish the close friendships that I've made over the years recently.
Great. How long were you actually at pre-college for? Just curious.
I have to do the math. So I went when I was in 8th grade, and so I guess 5 years.
Huh.
And then yeah, and I
And
was
then you
in 8th
continued
grade.
on
I
for the
continued on. I
college.
stayed there for my bachelor's and my master's. So total, I was at Juilliard for 10 years. It's a little too much for some people, but Jen and I basically did the same thing. So, and I want to talk about my sister as well. So
Sure, sure. Go ahead. I just wanted to just say a little bit about pre-college. What actually got you involved, first of all, in playing violin? Did you learn back in Korea, or did you start
I
here?
did. I actually started when I was 4, back in Korea, but barely started. And then we moved here, and uh, it was just given to me. I wish I had a cute story like everyone else, and had this. I saw it in school, and I really wanted to do it, but the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And my mom, being a musician, thought it would be good for us to pursue music and to at least learn, and
Sure.
have that experience in music education. So I was given the violin, and Jen was given the cello. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Did your mom help you, like, with she's played piano, so did she like help with that process of learning?
yeah,
And
she was
awesome.
very much involved in our upbringing. And even through college, she would listen. Um, and it wouldn't be the greatest thing sometimes. I mean, it's so hard to have a critic there all the time listening. And uh, but she was there. She was always there, and helping us. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with our success and where we made it today.
Great. Was she actually sitting in the lessons just out of curiosity, or
She
was
did,
that's
yeah.
so intense, right?
She sat through all our lessons, and she jot down all the notes that my teachers were saying. If I find a picture, I'll send it to you. But I have a picture of maybe one of the box, um, and she wrote in every single color, every single
Wow.
color pen, and it just looks like a masterpiece, an artwork. And we wanted to hang it up on the wall, actually.
You should. That's like an art piece right there for
Yeah,
sure.
it just looks so crazy. It looks like abstract art in a
That's
sense.
awesome. I like that. That's cool. And it's also good to have that support in a way. I mean, I know it detracts and is good as well. So, everyone has their own way of. It's good to have that support from parents, I think, too. You also mentioned your sister, so it'd be great to hear a little bit more. I went to school with her. I was in Jerome Carrington's studio with her briefly,
Yeah.
and yeah, it'd be great to hear a little bit about her too.
She had a huge influence on me, and she still does to this day. She is a great cellist, and she's currently with the Dallas Symphony. It's something that she recently won, and she's great. And my mom wishes that she could always mesh our strong points into one musical being, and I totally agree with her because Jen is the best practicer, and she has such a perfect foundation and technique, which I
Hmm.
had always struggled with. And her playing is very controlled and cool and calm and methodical and kind of thought out. So I try to emulate a lot of what she does in my own playing. And
Awesome.
I always admired her approach to perfecting and solidifying. And growing up in the same household together and listening to her practice and perform, I was able to gain that insight and learn from her. And, I felt less lonely doing so also. And we played a lot of chamber music together growing up, being together, in such close proximity. And we played the Brahms duo together,
Awesome.
Brahms double, and a couple of piano trios with our friend Kevin during school. And we both ended up staying, as I said earlier, at Juilliard for around 10 years. And then we also went to the same music festivals, like Music Academy of the West, Verbier, Aspen, and Meadowmount. So we did all the things, that everyone.
Awesome. It's amazing you didn't have any competitive. Did you have any competitive nature with your sister? Like, oh,
Oh yeah, for sure.
oh yeah.
Oh,
It'd be great to
God.
hear a little bit about that too. Just
Yeah, I mean, we are very close. I mean, I think we're the closest we can get as sisters, but we fight about the silliest, smallest things all the time. Um, we played in a quartet together during school, and one of the members she just like walked out of the room when we started fighting and yelling at each other. So, I mean, being sisters, it's easier to not have filters when you talk to each other. So it's a lot more direct in a way, but useful and really easy too in communication.
great. Well, I'm glad to hear that you have that connection with your sister, and that I'm sure that helps as well. Just help push you as well. When she's practicing, you mentioned how you enjoyed her technique in terms of practicing, and you've learned from that as well. So I think that's
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah, it'd be great to also hear about your teachers. Maybe
Yeah.
mention a little bit about the top few teachers you had and how they impacted your life.
Um, I owe all of who I am as a musician to them. And the five major teachers who made the biggest impacts in my life and stuck out the most are, in chronological order, Susan Kim, Sally Thomas, Sylvia Rosenberg, Glenn Dictorow, and Lisa Kim. And every single one has shaped my sound and the way I interpret a piece of music that I have to learn now. And I guess some of the main takeaways were just to do exactly what's written on the page, because it's so hard to just get lost in your emotions and your feelings and ignore a lot of the stuff there when you have all the directions there. And to fix things right then and there if you hear something off, and to practice efficiently and effectively, and to emulate the human voice singing, to take risks and never settle for mediocrity, and to also just find your own unique voice with the given parameters.
Great.
So I'm really thankful for them.
Sure, absolutely. And those are a really great set of teachers that have helped your upbringing. How much of an influence you would say has you personally be practicing for the last few years? Have you had you haven't had a teacher these the past few years, right? You're a professional
Right.
musician now. So
Yeah.
how much of a difference would you say is it, being on your own versus being with a teacher?
It's very different. I'll get a little more into it later when we talk about our auditions and later on in the process. But basically, I'm learning to do everything on my own a little more, and to really believe in myself more, and just to listen to yourself even more carefully, and to basically, you're just being your own teacher in a sense. Especially now that with a profession, you're not really given the lessons every week that you used to get during school. So you have to kind of come up with your own ideas and really listen. I guess that's the biggest thing.
Sure. Great. Well, it'd be great to get into more of what you're doing today. How are you involved in music? And, we could talk about your approaches to practicing like we just did a little bit on. And,
Yeah.
any doubts through your career, so any frustrations you've been through and things that came out in a positive way from that.
Yeah. Okay. So I am right now primarily an orchestral musician, and I'm a teacher also. I love teaching. It's been a passion of mine. And I also love to play chamber music when I'm given the opportunity. It's whenever we have the opportunity, we jump on it. But yeah. Anyway, I also taught ear training at Juilliard as a teaching fellow for 3 years
Awesome.
in the
Wow.
college division. So You might remember, did you take classes with Dr. Blaha?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so I worked with him for a couple years also.
Great.
He's still there.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, I can't believe it. I mean, I can. He's awesome. But, and in terms of doubts along the way in my career path, oh my gosh. I've had so many doubts along the way, and so many times I felt like the world was over, and I wanted to give up so many times. And it was actually the worst for me the closer I got to winning. And unfortunately, in our careers, if your goal is to become an orchestral musician, nothing is really guaranteed like they are for, let's say, doctors or lawyers. So we aren't really given any guarantee that we will have jobs, even if we have the perfect education or the perfect resume, you know? So in the end, what it really boils down to, I think, is the audition itself. And it's terrifying because you're just under all this pressure and you have one shot in this 10-minute audition to give it your best. So I like to say that it's like the Olympics of classical music in a way. Because you have a preliminary round, and then you have a semifinal round, and then a final round, and then a super final round. And in some places, they even have things called super semifinal rounds or super final rounds.
You're making me nervous just talking about it.
It's crazy. I mean, there are so many hurdles to jump through to just have a job. And many people may not actually know what the audition process is really like. And a lot of my friends who aren't musicians are under the impression that we are provided flights and hotel accommodations to take these auditions, but this really all comes out of our own pockets, you know? So aside from the nerves that we have to deal with, we also have that insane pressure of how much it costs, the costliness, and the amount of time that we dedicate to this. So it's draining in like every single possible way you can imagine, just emotionally, physically, and mentally. And I think auditions are their own forms of art, and you have to take that time to really perfect it, to really work on it. And so I was taking auditions for close to 4 years. And it was probably something like 30 something auditions. I lost track.
That's so crazy.
I know. And my audition process was I guess, solidly built through trial and error. And I'm so relieved and, you know, so happy to say that I finally landed my dream job at the Met. But getting there was quite the trek, you know.
Well, you definitely earned it, right?
Thanks. Yeah. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my audition journey so that, you know, people can relate, and hopefully this will be some kind of boost, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my first ever audition was in Philly and in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I somehow luckily got to the finals for that. And I'm so grateful to be on their sub list ever since. They are such a unique and amazing group of people and musicians who really play their heart out, and you really sense community within the group, and it's really great. Going back to that audition though, I think that was just pure luck. And a couple of months later, I took my next audition, from which I didn't advance. And then a whole slew of them where I didn't do well. And I think getting as far as I did in my first audition was awesome. And it gave me a lot of confidence and the possibility that I can succeed. But I also think that it backfired on me in the sense that it gave me a bigger ego, and I was not listening to myself as carefully as I should have been. And, you know, at that point, I was simply nowhere ready to take auditions to win them at this point. So I did a lot of work making things consistent, intonation, rhythm, and sound.
Mm-hmm.
at the key things that they're looking for. And all of that can really just be quickly lost under nerves. So with the help that I got from my teachers who really taught me everything I know about excerpts, I slowly began to regain my confidence as I advanced to the semis for some time. And then eventually there was a point where I was consistently getting to the finals for a slew of them, maybe 6 or 7. And this was actually the most frustrating point for me because I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And I didn't know why I was getting stuck in the finals and not making it all the way.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was relying too much on the feedback that I was getting from everyone that I was playing for. And what's interesting was one of the last comments I received in that phase from one of the judges was that I sounded perfect and like exactly like I should, but that it's not mine. So this was really actually interesting for me because all my life, my strong point was my musical side. And the technique was something that I always had to work on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, through my audition process, this was reversed. And I had basically become an audition robot because I was so intent on perfecting things and crossing all my T's and dotting all my I's that I made probably the last of my priorities to make music and to have fun. And I mean, how can you have fun under all that pressure, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but then I realized that this was possible. And I decided to take that comment that I received really seriously. And so I stopped playing for people and I didn't play for anyone but my own iPhone and the voice
Mm-hmm.
memos app. Not
Yeah.
even with a good microphone or anything, just your phone, and listen back on them. And I decided to make my own experiment out of it. And essentially, I became my own teacher, as I was saying earlier, and my harshest critic. And I started obsessively listening to myself as if I was listening to someone else playing, which helped me a lot. So if you listen back to yourself pretending that this person that you're listening to is someone that you really don't like or someone that you see as your competitor, then you can really pick out so many more things that bother you.
Yeah,
And
we are our worst critics, right? So
yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, I could attest to that as well. I've been, in the past, I use my phone all the time to record, and it's so different than, having a short lesson with a teacher. So definitely can attest to that as well.
Yeah. I also want to make sure, I want to say that it's really important to keep a practice journal and to write down all the things that bother you and that you can improve, because this is the only way you'll remember anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then review what you jot down and try to fix them and record them again and really obsess over every single detail. And then listen back again and keep woodshedding until it's the best you can play it. And repetition is key, so you get the same result every time.
Even
Yeah,
under nerves, basically.
right, even under nerves. So that's the only way you can really fight your nerves. Be so prepared that you have no other solution,
Mm-hmm.
that you'll just rely on muscle memory if all goes wrong.
Right. I'm sure also going through so many auditions, like each and every, I mean, I know you were frustrated for the first, like, probably half of it. And then probably at a certain point, it kind of switched gear. You probably thought, okay, well, I'm going to be going this without that expectation of being, winning this. I'm just here to do, what I consistently have been practicing to do. And if I don't win, you have, there's another opportunity. So you
Right.
just kept on pushing. When in that process would you say that you've experienced that switch of gear?
I guess right around where I was talking about, where I started getting to the finals. And then I actually started winning the 2 trials towards the end. One for the assistant concertmaster with the Atlanta Symphony, and then the one with Minnesota Orchestra. And at that point, I was so confident in my playing, and I started really owning the auditions and taking them up in my brain as challenges. And so I even had fun going to the audition. So it's a completely different mindset when you feel ready and grounded. And yeah.
That's great. That's awesome that you were able to continue and, you finally got to where you needed to get to, because,
Yeah.
that I can understand that 30 times is a lot of times. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
4
No, it's
years.
probably in the latter of the 30s, but
Right.
I wanted to speak about my Met audition for a little bit.
Sure.
So after the trials didn't work out, I was just in a new state of low, and it's, again, even harder when you get so close and then things don't end up working out the way you hoped. And so I was in the slump for about 3 months, and then I got a call from the personnel manager at the Met around January of last year, and he told me he was calling to see if I can sub with them. And I was so surprised and happy that I was given this chance to just be in the pit, because at that point I had attended so many operas at the Met growing up, and though I dreamt of the possibility of playing in this group, I never really even thought it could be a reality. So I was really excited, jumping around, just at the opportunity to sub. And my first one was Don Giovanni. And I was freaking out because they called me the day of, and then they asked me to come in and sight read
Oh,
that
wow.
the performance that night.
The pressure's on.
Yeah, the pressure was on. But I ended up coming in to sub almost every day after that initial night. So
Amazing.
I played my first ring cycle shortly thereafter. So I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but there's a point to this whole thing, I promise.
Sure.
I ended up befriending a lot of the people that I sat with and around. And we really have super long intermissions. So they can do the stage changes. And so you really end up getting to know these people and have the time to talk to your colleagues and ask questions. And I met so many wonderful people who I admire and respect so much. And these people are now my real colleagues. So in April, the Met announced an audition for 3 vacancies in the first violin section. And I, of course, sent in my resume the minute I heard about it, and I got to work. This was my first real opera audition, and so I wasn't really familiar with any of the excerpts on the list. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start from scratch and really make a point to perfect these as I learn them, and learn them as perfectly as I can without wasting time just from the get-go. And so I took a different approach with this particular audition, because I had taken a couple months off auditions at this point, and I felt like it was a fresh breath of air, and I was starting on a clean slate. And a lot of it is organization in the beginning. It's really important for your preparation. So I used my journal again, and I found the recordings and listened to them. And this takes forever, by the way, because operas are like 4 hours long, and they don't tell you where it is. They might tell you what act and what scene it is, but even then it's just like so long. So then you have to write down the tempos and the characters, and research the plots and the storylines and what's exactly happening in the excerpt itself. And then I made due dates for specific goals and separated the list into different categories in terms of difficulty, but also in terms of dynamics, like louder or softer excerpts, and which one's more technical or more singing. And then in terms of strokes, like off the string, on the string. And so I started learning the excerpts after all this organizing, and then slowly starting at half tempo or less, gradually increase the tempo as we do when we practice. And through this process, I was also taking notes and decided it would be good to realize in this practice that there are a lot of things. There are actually a lot of things that the teacher won't be able to identify or tell you from that 1 hour you spend with them every week, you know.
Right.
So there are little quirks here and there in your own playing that you can find. And there was actually one mentor who, towards the end of my audition process, told me to stop taking comments from everyone and to take things that they say with a grain of salt, because everyone's looking for something a little different. And if you spend all your time catering to their needs, then you lose out on all the other stuff around it. So you have to experiment and realize the little quirks in your playing that might be habitual or so minuscule that it only happens once, but you still hear it. And you should still write this down and make sure it doesn't happen again. It could be something like being a fraction late off your ties all the time, or that the vibrato on a certain finger is a little too wide. Or it could be good things in your playing that you write down too. So I was in the middle of playing the ring cycle at this point still. So I had to be really efficient with my time because I wasn't really doing anything that month other than like practicing, performing, eating, and driving, because it takes time to drive there too.
Sure, that must have been exhausting, I'm sure.
Oh my God, yeah. Driving was the worst because you never know if you'll hit traffic going from New Jersey to New York.
Right.
So you always have to leave like a 2-hour gap in between, at least, you know, when you leave your house to get there.
Sure.
So it was very, I had no time to do anything else.
Most people will go home and they'll just lay on bed and pass out. So
I
props to you,
know.
you know, that's a commitment for sure.
Yeah, the ring cycle, for people who don't know, it's a cycle of 4 German epic music dramas, and it totals up to 17 hours long. And the one of them is shorter, and it's like 2.5 hours, but without intermission. So you have to really hold in you can't go to the bathroom that whole time. So you somehow have to you have to make sure you go before you start. The other 3 are like 6 hours a piece with intermission. So a lot of times we started the show at 6 p.m. and then left the Met Opera House at like midnight. And by the time I drove home, it was like 1 a.m.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I really had to like make sure I was using my time efficiently at this time.
Sure. Have there been any accidents, just out of curiosity, at the Met Pit with all those long operas?
Maybe, not that I know of. But
Sure.
there was one time that I think we were playing the Valkyrie, and I parked in a certain like a spot that, you know, normally would be okay, but then that particular day and time I wasn't allowed to park there. And so I got out of the show around midnight, and my car wasn't there anymore.
Oh no.
And I realized that I called the people, and they told me, your car's at the tow pound. Imagine like having played this opera for like 6 hours, and then it's midnight, you want to get home into bed, and your car's not there, and you have to go to a tow pound and like have all this insurance stuff pulled out and your registration. And yeah, I mean, that's my accident during
That's
that.
not fun. Totally not.
Getting back to the audition though, so when I felt ready to play for people, I asked so many people and ended up playing for 8. And this helped me tremendously, because I think especially at opera auditions, it's really important to play for people that you know and respect within that group, because a lot of the time, especially with opera excerpts, there are traditional tempos that people take and little rubatos here and there that they're used to hearing. And so you want to try to emulate that as much as possible. recorded and listened back to my recordings until the last day of my audition, and I'm still playing at both half tempo and at tempo through the list, and I think I was running the list like 3 times a day at that point. And resting is also crucial towards the last 2 weeks before the audition. So it's really important to eat well and to sleep well and to just pace yourself and try not to have any drama with like your friends or your sister.
Absolutely. How are you able
Or
to balance that, by the way? I'm just I do see that you post sometimes yoga and things like that. Was that
yeah,
something you incorporated before, or that's something recent?
I've always I think I've been practicing yoga for maybe 4 years now. I guess when I started auditioning, just to have some kind of outlet to relieve my stress a little bit.
Sure.
Yoga is really good for that. Also, just I find that, you know, consistently working out helps to keep yourself sane and just happier. And so I like to work out. Um, yeah, I guess that's really it.
Sure. Well, great. And we get great to go back into a little bit more of how,
Yeah,
uh,
the last steps.
sure.
So the day I walked into the building for my audition, I felt like I never had before, and because I felt so bulletproof and just ready to perform for these people. And um, I really respect the way that the Met musicians hold their auditions, because every single round is done behind the screen, and they take all our phones, they confiscate our devices before we draw our numbers. So just so that everything is fair and there's no fishy stuff going on. And I don't know how many people were in the prelim round, but there were 12 in the semis, and then it was whittled down to 3 in the finals. And 2 of us won, my friend Angela and I. I think I played the best audition I could have, but it wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could play that day. So, but I still couldn't believe it when they called my name.
That's amazing. And it's interesting that you mentioned, like, every day we can't, we're not like robots. We can't consistently every day play exactly the same way. How
Right.
did that impact you, like, throughout that process? Like every day, you would come for an audition, you have that expectation of a previous audition. You'd be like, I'll be better this time. So how did you balance that stress of the day, basically?
Yeah. That day, well, there were a couple of days I had to go in, but the last day that I did, my parents drove me, and it really helps to be on your home turf in a sense, because you don't have to like worry about the flight being delayed or canceled, or your hotel not being just right, or the subways being wrong or anything. So my parents drove me, and they've been a huge support system for me, throughout my whole life. And I actually got a hotel that day for that night because I didn't know how long this day would be. It was from the semifinals, and then we had to play like 4 times. So I got there, I think around 10 a.m. and I was there until 6 p.m. or something like that.
Oh man. Wow.
Yeah, and we didn't have our phones. So all we were
Oh my
doing
God.
was just waiting around and, hoping that, we get these results sooner than later. I brought a book. I wanted to talk about this book also. But basically, my parents being there, I think, really helped me to just feel calmer in a sense. And having gotten that hotel room right next to Lincoln Center, it wasn't cheap, but it was really worth the investment, because I actually went back during the waiting time and just laid down for a second and did a couple of yoga moves and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to just feel calm that day and just good vibes the whole day, no negative thoughts. And Yeah, so I have to owe for some credit to this self-help book that I was reading during this time to
Mhm.
help me with my motivation and my practice. And it's called You Are a Badass, and it's by Jen Sincero. She curses a lot in the book, and it's a fun kind of fun, easy read. And
Mhm.
so it's fun. You guys should all read it. It's she speaks of so many things that helped me, but one of the things that stuck out to me the most that I wanted to share today was you really have to manifest what you want and have a vision and really make it come to real life. So she talks about, all the different approaches that you can take to, have that manifestation. And so that day, when I walked into the building to take my audition, I was really just already pretending that I worked there, even if I didn't.
Mhm.
And another point that she makes is that if you need help, um, ask for it. And don't ask just anyone to help you. Just ask, the people you trust and the experts, even if it means that you'll be splurging a bit for and paying for knowledge. And looking back on it, I would say that I literally did everything in my power to make this my job. And there were days that I drove into the city in the evenings and when I knew no one would be there, and I would use the audition room just to play a couple of notes, just to get a feel of what it felt like and sounded like. And I
Mhm.
know this isn't a given to everyone, but if you're given the resources, I think, in my opinion, it would be sad to not use them. So if you have access to a building or a hall that you'll be playing the audition in, just
Mhm.
play there and get a feel of what it feels like and sounds like, and just envision walking into the room and the whole, like, how you're going to have your stand, how you're going to, you know. I actually don't play auditions with my shoes on.
No.
It's become a habit actually because I don't know why and when I started doing that, but I felt like it was helping me. Um, just because in the house we don't wear shoes.
Sure.
So yeah, I think I was just used to practicing that way. And they just feel trapped when they're in shoes. So I just wanted to like have that freedom, I guess, of just um moving around a little bit more.
That's fascinating. That, I guess it is like it would play with your head because you're used to a way of doing things, and then you're in a different environment. So I guess being closer to something you're used to
Yeah.
would definitely help. And it's good that you actually had that ability also to have that space to perform, to practice in. That definitely would help. I had, previously some auditions also had access to that space, and that tremendously also made me feel a little more confident as well with that process.
Yeah,
I've already been there. It's not something I'm going to the unknown completely. So
for
that's,
sure. There
yeah.
are some people who talk about that kind of it helps you mentally also, as you just said.
Mhm.
um, it's a form of preparation to just, even if it's not that space, just like opening a door and going through thinking that you're walking into the audition room really helps. That also takes practice in a way.
Right.
And so, yeah, of course, there are people who win their first or second auditions. And my sister was one of them. She won her second audition ever with the Colorado Symphony. And
Mhm.
then she didn't even stay there for a year and took Dallas and won that one. But I was not one of them. I definitely had to struggle through to get to this point. And would I have done things differently if I knew what to do to condense my journey to make it a little shorter? Yeah, of course. I mean, no one wants to go through years of this torture, but um, in retrospect, I don't regret it that much because of
Mhm.
all the detours that I ended up taking. It brought me to the place I am today, musically and physically. And so I feel like I was brought to the right place at the right time. And now I can share my experiences with people and hopefully be relatable and be of
Hmm.
help and a source of encouragement. And
Sure.
yeah, I truly believe now in that really cliche and annoying phrase that everything happens for a reason.
Hmm.
It didn't before, but um, it just felt like everything was lining up and all the pieces were being put together one by one, starting with the subbing and then getting to know people and having access to the building. And my dad still jokes around to this day saying that I've probably flown to every major city in the US just to land a job 20 minutes away from home. So,
Right. At least you were able to go see other places. So at least there's
yeah,
some
I
sort of
guess
perk.
so. When
Yeah.
you go to these auditions, though, you don't really have the luxury of like walking around
Right.
because you're so like uptight the whole time and nervous. And when it's over, all you want to do is like go home.
Right. Well, it's great that you're able to get to where you are, and I'm it'd be great to tap also into now, the things that are transitioning, with the Metropolitan Opera and all of these institutions. You mentioned um, your she's part of Dallas currently, right?
Yeah,
So you said that they're now, and they're now planning on working now. How are the other orchestras being impacted in the
I
tri-state
think
area?
for the most part, everyone is not working and
Hmm.
just staying at home. I think it's the safest thing to do, but it's not sustainable either. Um, and a lot of groups are getting paid still. Some aren't. Met isn't. We were furloughed our last show was March 11th or 12th or something like that.
Hmm.
And we were supposed to have our opening night of Cenerentola, and we were furloughed in April, and we've been receiving unemployment benefits. But orchestras, I think it'll be easier for orchestras to get together, and I think they're starting to phase it in little by little in smaller groups. So for now, Dallas, for example, is having um, chamber music groups, socially distanced still, so they're not right next to each other. I think they're maintaining the 6 feet thing with the masks, and they're taking all the precautionary things like checking everyone's temperature and getting regular tests done before the musicians get together. Um, we haven't found that yet because it's a little harder for an opera orchestra to get together just because we're on top of each other in the pit all the time. It's a tighter space, and also just we have singers who are belting out to the back of the stage, but of course, like some spit is going to spew out also when they're singing. So it's hard. It's hard to balance that, but mainly during this pandemic, which is so not fun in like every way possible. It's horrible and detrimental in like every single way, except for the fact that you can live in your PJs all day.
Sure.
But yeah, the world is in such a sad state, and it's definitely taken a toll work wise. But I've mainly been using this time to figure out to do all the things that I've wanted to do that I've been putting off just due to the lack of time.
Yeah.
And I've been reading a lot of books that I bought years ago. And I took up French, which I wanted to do for so long, just on Duolingo. It's this app. It's really
Yeah.
fun. Have you used it?
Yeah, I use it sometimes. I've gone off it a little bit, but of course I should use it again. It's a good app
Yeah,
actually.
it's
Also
fun.
to learn French too, because I go to French as well, France often, and I knew French for like a brief period, and then of course when you don't
Yeah.
practice something, you lose it all. So Duolingo is a great app. Definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and then just doing work around the house and learning how to cook some dishes.
Sure. So there is some silver lining. You get a little bit more time now for
Yeah,
yourself.
for sure. I wasn't able to do any of these things during the year because our schedule is so grueling.
Right.
And the operas are just much longer than symphonic work. So it's double the work, double the time that we put in.
And are you teaching as well during this time?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I've been teaching online over Zoom and FaceTime, which I have some really awesome students, and I have to say that it works perfectly fine over virtually. It's a little frustrating to not be with the student in person, but overall, I'm surprised at how well it works out. And I've told you earlier, but I've meddled in some video editing, and I'm trying to learn stuff virtually, slowly, one thing at a time. And I even bought a Blue Yeti microphone the other day, and I still have no idea how to use it other than for this podcast. Just plug it in. Yeah, in terms of teaching, that's what I'm doing. And then I have a chamber concert coming up in Connecticut in late August. So hopefully by then things will be a little better. But we are going to get tested and everything before getting together.
Sure.
My friend Paul Frucht wrote a piece called Essential, and it's dedicated to the essential workers, to thank them. And we're also playing some pieces by two Black composers, Carlos Simon and Jesse Montgomery, just to advocate for Black Lives Matter.
Great. Are you streaming some of those concerts as well?
I hope so. I will look into that.
But, yeah, it'd be great to just, put a link or something so people can know about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Great. And, it'd be great to close off a little bit with, any words of wisdom that you have for artists. You said so much already about practicing and your experience and things like that. So it'd be great to just know if you have any last words about, how to deal with all this.
Yeah. Couple of things, actually. Never give up. It's so easy to give up, but just keep going. It'll pay off. Sure. Take just help and action for all the things that you really want, and never be shy to ask for help, and always ask questions when you don't know something. When an opportunity is given to you, just jump on it and always take it. Especially in your earlier years,
Sure. And act fast, right? Like you did. You immediately signed up for it, and
act fast for sure. Really listen to yourself when you practice. Don't let things slide, and always fix things on the spot. And I guess the biggest thing is to stay humble and to do the work, and have really big dreams, reach for the stars, and always strive to be your best self. And gratitude, just always be grateful for where you are, and just be really appreciative of all the things that are coming your way.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'm really glad that you had this chance to talk with me, and I mean, I had this chance to talk to you as well, and learn more about you, because we didn't really interact much in our when we were younger. But it's amazing just seeing, hearing from all of these musicians that I'm interviewing and artists. It's really interesting just knowing that it's not easy. You don't just get things served on a silver platter, usually. So, it's nice to hear that there is a process behind all of this. And, some people are lucky and, they get it in second try and first try, and some others, it takes forever. And props to you for just continuing that journey, regardless of how painful it is. So,
so painful.
Thanks, so I wish you the best luck in the future, and I would love to stay in touch and get to meet you in the flesh one of these days, and when this is over. And I would like to see you perform. That would be great. I haven't gone to the Metropolitan Opera in too long, so I would love to come back.
That would be so great. I mean, once this all pans out, I can't wait for the time that we'll be able to go back and make music there. So I'd love to see you there. That would be so
it'd be great also to catch up with your sister as well. I'd love to also interview her. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And let's keep in touch.
Thank you, Marcel. So
okay. Good to see you. Take care. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.